Hello everybody, Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
It's number 127, highly significant, as all numbers are.
I challenge you, Adrian.
In Sounding the Shadows, 127. No, nothing there.
Maybe
Right.
Somebody else will have something.
Hasn't
I
it
don't
been
know.
amazing, the response to talking about Halloween? I mean, so much opinion.
Yeah, we've had, I think, more emails, haven't we, about this than we have about a lot of things. And are there any general things that have come through, do you think, in the emails?
I think there's a sort of puzzlement about it and a concern about getting it right. That people not wanting to go over the top, and I think some people feeling it's a bit of a fuss about nothing, and just about everything in between.
No,
really.
other people deeply concerned. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
some
we
deeply
heard from
concerned,
somebody
yeah.
who lives in an area of England where there's still, in Lancashire actually, where there still are. It was always called the Witches of Pendle, which is Pendle Hill, and if you've never come,
old country.
it is,
Yeah.
and if you've never come across that, it's worth just having a look about their story. But to say there are still covens, there are still witches, there is still evil. So there's that extreme reality. But then there's the other reality of not wanting to upset children who are coming round to knock on the door. And I know some people, Adrian, were talking about how something that was supposed to be good, the eve of All Hallows, of the All Saints' Day, has kind of been hijacked, partly commercially from America and partly, maybe if you like, by the devil. I don't know, that it has become something very, maybe dark and difficult and dangerous, do you think?
I don't know. I must admit to getting a bit confused. I mean, I'm really glad people have written, but I ended up not being quite sure what I thought about anything. But I do remember, we both remember, don't we, how when I was working in Birmingham in the security unit there with kids who came from a very specific culture, really, where doing wrong was not wrong. It was what you did.
And it was quite exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah, very
You were
exciting.
running away from the police, you stole things, you hid places, and I remember one of the challenges for you, and maybe that's one of the challenges that's come through this, is kind of how to make goodness exciting. And I know some of the people writing were talking about how, I can think of two people who wrote, one in Australia and one in the UK, about how they'd been to Christian bookshops and they'd bought things, like pencils with Jesus loves you, things like that. Two very different reactions, actually. One of them saying that she felt very happy that people had gone away with something, but children had gone away with something very positive. And the other one saying that her worry was she became the funny Christian woman who just didn't have sweets. But, how difficult is this to make worthiness exciting, you said about
I'm not sure you can talk about making worthiness exciting, really. I mean, being worthy isn't about being either excited or not excited, is it? It's about a perspective that is different.
But I think, and I think what came through was the perspective of actually wanting children to see something of Jesus being the light of the world, the light part is something.
Yeah.
Because it is the most remarkable and amazing thing that Jesus brought light to a dark world, but somehow that's far more difficult to get across.
Well, it is when some of the other options seem more immediately interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
And also you've got to keep common sense, haven't you?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
remember Kate and what was you were talking about her dressing up when she was much younger.
Yeah, well, this was a very worthy dressing up parade, Adrian, in which everybody was going to be a Bible character, right?
Right.
And Kate had raided my somewhat limited amount of jewellery, and she'd found a petticoat of mine, and she arrived downstairs in this very odd petticoat with loads of jewellery. And I said, who are you thinking you are? She said, I'm the Queen of Sheba. And I think all that meant was just that at that moment I thought, well, you cannot parade around at the dressing up parade at our church in a petticoat, a very slip, really, a very shiny thing.
Yeah.
And a load of jewellery. But the other side of me thought, this child is totally innocent in this. And I suppose that's what I wanted to hang on to. It wasn't a pumpkin problem. You know, pumpkins are lovely, nutritious, round things.
Nutritious and round.
Well, and golden and yellow and bright. And they've been hijacked again into something.
I guess one of the questions is whether... Actually, what we might be able to do instead of some of the stuff that happens is to actually look for things in people's behaviour or activities or way of living that might be neutral in nature or iffy. You know, some of these things are, or potentially positive. And we've got a number of experiences that one of the things that we thought of was what happened in Costa Rica, wasn't it? Where we were in a church and we came across some cabinets. Someone showed them to us. And they were filled with little silver body parts.
And
in great detail.
Babies and houses but yes, I think the thing that intrigued us, I seem to remember some silver kidneys, and kidneys are not the most beautiful of things. Livers, hearts, and we were very bewildered. It was a massive cathedral, wasn't it, in Costa Rica, and we were very puzzled.
Well, it was outside our particular churchmanship, wasn't it?
Somewhat.
But I can't remember what the fellow said. What did he say when we asked him?
Well, the idea was that you prayed for healing, and when you'd prayed for healing, then you bought, probably at great expense, one of these silver things that represented what you wanted or what you needed healing in. And I think the thing that impressed us most was we were horrified. Let's be honest, we were horrified. It seemed to us almost like going back to medieval times where you bought something and presented it, you know, as sort of relic.
More of a ritualistic thing.
Absolutely,
really.
But he said, do you remember? He said, well, I see it as an opportunity. These people have come for healing. And maybe it's superstitious the way they're going about it, but maybe there's a potential for talking about Jesus, talking about healing, moving them from where they are to somewhere else. Is that what you were thinking?
It is. And the crucial thing is to move them from where they are and not from where they are not. And that takes some clear judgment, and
but that's what we were meaning then about the children who are just dressing up or going around on an exciting outing in the dark to get some sweets. To take that and instead of saying that's wrong, you mean to use that as a jumping board. There is actually nothing wrong. Springboard, I think.
There's nothing wrong with that bit of it. And I remember years ago now someone coming to see me who was doing some Pause for Thoughts on the local radio.
Oh, local ones, yeah.
And he wanted to talk about the lottery. So I said, well, what are you going to say about the lottery? I don't know why he'd come to ask me, because I don't think I was suitable for how way he felt about things. But he said, I'm going to tell people it's a terrible waste of time and money and all that.
And gambling.
And gambling. And I said, well, they'll certainly put the kettle on there. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well... You don't seriously think, do you, people are going to listen to that? I said, let me just suggest something to you and see what you think about it. Why do people do the lottery? And he said, well, I know it's because they want money. I said, well, yes, but the bigger picture seems to me to be they want something amazing to happen in their lives.
Yes.
And he said, well, I suppose that's true. I said, and the other thing, the money, they wanted lots of money. They wanted something they could spend. And I said, what did Jesus say about amassing money? He said, he was against... I said, now, hold on. He said, get together as much money as you possibly can in heaven. So what Jesus was doing was taking the taking what perhaps the way people felt and using it as, I think, I don't know if he did or not, I suspect not, using it to say these instincts are potentially great instincts, but let's look at what they could mean in a different context. So yeah, that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose the biblical reference, if you like, apart from the things that Jesus said, was Paul, who was an absolute opportunist, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Just an extraordinary person with such imagination. I mean, he's always described as a bit of a dry old stick, but I never see him like that. I mean, for example, when he came to the altar, which had the it had a plaque or something or other saying that it was to an unknown god. Well, I mean,
That's
they've
right,
got so many gods, that maybe, do you think the Greeks may have thought maybe there was one left out and they needed to make sure they'd included all of them?
I read about it recently, and apparently the Greeks had the unknown god. They thought they might have inadvertently left out one god from their pantheon
Who might be
of
upset.
gods. And Paul just grabbed the opportunity.
Yes, he grabbed the opportunity.
Dry old stick. He was about I don't know if I'd have got on with him.
But I mean, he used that again as a springboard, didn't he?
He did.
To get to talk about the real God, the unknown God, the God they didn't know, and turned it into an opportunity.
He did.
And he could have said, "Now, come on, you lot! You've got it all wrong. There are no such things as all these gods. There's only one God."
Well, he said, "Forget the unknown God."
Yes.
Because I know the God.
Yes.
Whereas actually said, "I know who the unknown God is, and I'm going to tell you."
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure some committees nowadays would have decided that wasn't a very good idea. But you're right. He grabbed opportunities and he used them.
And I think, in fairness, some of the things that we heard about in emails of very bright and brilliant light parties in which kids were encouraged to have a brilliant time, and there's always something about lights, fairy lights and colour and brightness that you can counter some of these things very, very positively, as long as you don't use them as an opportunity to preach. And use this as an opportunity, as a springboard into something more exciting and more colourful, maybe.
Well, I don't think being a Christian is incredibly exciting. I think there have been times, and there are times, when it is truly exciting. But it's so grounded and so attached to what actually happens with people.
As Jesus was all the time.
That it's very hard to get it right. We had a friend, didn't we, who went into secondary schools, and we found it absolutely fascinating that he went in to talk about drink, alcohol and drugs and things.
Well, he'd been asked in, hadn't he?
Yeah, he'd been asked in.
Yeah.
And he always began these sessions with the groups of teenagers by saying, right, tell me all the best things about drink and drugs.
It's so clever, because you can imagine all these kids saying, "Here we go,
I know, exactly.
Another talk about
and
how drugs are bad and
alcohol
is bad."
He had a board and he wrote down, and they said, "Oh, you feel this and you do this and it's exciting when you do that." And he wrote them all down, and there was a great conversation and excitement there, and they got
some
a bit lost.
Bewilderment, I should think.
So.
Yeah.
But then, when he'd made that list, he said, "Thank you very much for that. Now I understand why you want to do that. Now I want you to tell me what's wrong with it when you do it. Tell me what happens." And there were tears and fear and all the negative.
Talked about things they wished they hadn't done when they drank too much.
Yeah, absolutely, and things that had happened they never planned to happen, but ended up happening, and they wished it hadn't.
Yeah.
And so he was starting from the point of saying, "I understand what you're doing, but now I understand what it's doing to you." And they were with him, and they were able to talk about it, and not feel that the side of it that excited them was being sidelined. And I think it's quite enough. I mean, you need to know what you're doing if you're going to do that kind of thing, of course. But and like Jesus, I mean, nearly always found interestingly circuitous ways to change behaviour.
Well, I think that's really important. I mean, maybe that's our particular thing, but you don't have to do what you did last year or what you feel the church generally is doing. You need to look at your kids, your congregation, the people you know, and think, how is this going to impact on them? What are they going to feel and think and want when this challenge is there, whether it's Halloween or any of the other things? Because we were talking, weren't we, about the fact you've talked about secondary school kids there, and I mean, we all know that there's some terribly evil things happening through Facebook. Kids used to come home from school and maybe they'd been bullied or frightened or challenged at school, but they could come home and be safe. And now, because of social media and both boys and girls getting into horrible messes through being asked to, do things that they will know deep down are not right. So there are some real evils around, and finding the ways to tackle those is going to be that same circuitous way.
Well, we don't seem to rise as easily and quickly to react to those things. I know people don't like them, but that is truly evil. And what I admire about the chap I was talking about going in like that was to be able to uncover what was going on so that they could really, really talk about it. And that's a real art.
And that's hard for families, hard for parents with kids, isn't it? And hard for kids with other kids. Yeah. These challenges are huge, really. There is some real dark stuff around, and maybe that's what we should be praying about and facing and wrestling with as to what we might be able to possibly do.
Yeah, and as we were saying, to look at what's in people and see if there's a place you can start from to go to another place. That would be exciting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I always remember G.K. Chesterton saying, wife beating is not the poker problem, and alcoholism is not the alcohol problem. They're all people problems. And if you deal with
they're all people with problems.
They're people problems. I mean, they're not the things. There will always be another thing. If you took all those things away, we would find more things. But the trick is the God trick is taking, like me with my terrible sarcasm when I was younger, and turning it into humour that might actually be useful, which was quite a trick, I reckon.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, didn't you? I mean, I don't know whether you want to use the story about Paul and the angel canteen or you and the angel canteen, but both of them are pretty valid as to how this was something you tried to use as a way to explain what God can do.
Well, that's right. I used to talk about the
which are you going to be, or Paul?
God comes into the angel canteen,
right?
If there is one. And he says, hey, fellas, girls, I don't know if they have sex, have sex, angels.
I think just don't get into any gender issues, Adrian.
No. Angels, hello, angels. This is 2,000 years ago, right? I found someone to preach to the Gentiles, and they say, fantastic, what's he like? Because it would have been a he, wouldn't it? So he says, he's tremendously well educated. He's really, really clever, and he's into everything. And he's exactly the kind of person that we want. And they say, that's fantastic. And tell us something else about him. He says, well, when he sees an aim, when he sees something he needs or wants, he goes for it, like, amazingly. And they say, oh, this is such a relief you've found someone. And they say, so what's he doing at the moment? And God says, a little problem there. He's actually murdering Christians at the moment. But it's only a matter of time. I know I can turn him around. And all those things that were in Paul, all the things that later on, obviously, he regretted terribly, he took them and he turned them round and he said, I'm going to turn your darkness into light.
Yes.
And you're going to work for me, and you're going to be absolutely thrilled at what you see, but it's going to be tough. That's what happened to Paul, isn't it?
It is. Yep, and maybe that involves allowing yourself to wrestle in the middle of complex problems. Back to Halloween, or back to anywhere really, or forward to anywhere. The world is full of problems, and staying in that center and thinking, I must be part of some solution. And it might be as simple as giving somebody a rubber, saying Jesus loves you. That might be just right for one person. But it might be taking on the argument, or it might be something totally different. One of the things, keeping with teenagers for a second, that we've noticed is how much they respond to challenge. Some of the most disturbed children have been helped more by being taken up mountains and doing things that challenge their safety. Being a Christian is a challenge. It's a huge challenge if we're going to follow Jesus to the cross and beyond.
But it must be reassuring for people to think, I may not like myself very much, but whatever I am can be turned into gold.
Yeah.
And it can be used. And here, quickly, before we go, here's a question I heard someone ask the other day.
Well, it was me asked it.
Final question. Oh, it was you. All right.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't remember. Would Jesus go to the light party or the Halloween party?
Yes.
And I think the answer is probably both.
Yes.
But the question is well worth asking.
Yes.
Because I think he might have said, well, I would have to see what it felt like was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it would certainly not immediately be, obviously, the light party. I wouldn't go and sit with those people.
Well, we know that he spent an awful lot of time going to parties that were clearly full of people who you might not think that...
Wine bibbers.
Wine bibbers.
Yeah, wine bibbers.
What's a wine bibber?
I don't know, somebody who bibs wine. No, but the point is the same.
Yes, it is the same.
He was criticised for being with people where he shouldn't have been, at the wrong party.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's not easy.
But we have loved hearing from so many of you, so keep challenging us, and as well as challenging yourself.
Look forward to what you're going to become.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.